It's the world's oldest hatred, anti-Semitism. But why? Why do they hate us? What's the reason for this hate? Take a listen to this fascinating and insightful conversation between one of the greatest minds in the world today, Jordan Peterson, on the Joe Rogan show. Take a look at what he has to say.
And so this is like, I can really see this starting to happen on the right. Like, I've been tracking psychopathic behavior on the right for probably 4 years, something like that, especially on the anti-Semitic side, because that's really where it reared its head first. And
why is that?
There's nothing more annoying than a successful minority. Right. Now, that's part of it. And I'm going to, I might as well get myself in trouble right away, too.
Yeah, for sure.
Well,
this is a real subject.
Well, so, it's a real terrible subject.
It's interesting because if you don't criticize it enough, you're compromised. If you criticize, it's like, when it comes to anti-Semitism, like, it's one of those things where you can't separate. It's a religion, and it's also a race, and it's also a government. Mm-hmm. That's where things get weird.
Right.
And then there's also the concept of intelligence agencies and compromise that also gets attached to it, the manipulation of world markets and money, and there's a lot to unpack. And then there's regular Jewish people. Have nothing to do with that.
Well, the Jews, too, they're very successful.
Yeah.
And so what you would expect from a purely statistical point of view is you'd expect them to be overrepresented at the extremes.
They're also a walled garden, right?
Meaning?
Meaning it's very difficult to join. They don't proselytize. They don't try to get you to join. Right. And they're all very tightly knit. They call themselves the Klan. They're all like locked in. The Jewish Klan, not KKK. The problem with that term has been compromised by the Ku Klux Klan. But I mean it in terms of tribe.
Well, community.
Yeah, community. They're very tight knit in that regard. They stick together. Well, and if you understand the history, obviously, of Nazi Germany and of persecution in Eastern Europe, you have to. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, well, all these complex things are multidimensional. I mean, I watched your whole conversation with Douglas, and I thought you guys did a very credible job, all three of you, of navigating unbelievably choppy waters. So that's the first thing I'd like to say, because one of the things I was trying to figure out when I was watching that is, do I think I could have done a better job of any of you? And I certainly didn't walk away from it with that idea in mind. But then underneath all that, I thought there's a really unbelievably tricky problem here, and I think that's why it's made it poked up into. Well, you also set that conversation up, but it poked up and made itself manifest in that conversation. And the issue is, how do you identify the psychopathic pretenders? And it's even worse now, and then make a barrier, right? Now, the right was calling for the left to do that for decades, and they didn't, and they couldn't. And the left is not good at drawing barriers, partly temperamentally. The right is somewhat better, but there's no shortage of monstrosity there. And so then the question is, how do you draw the line? And that's kind of what I was, because I've been watching these they're not right-wing, these psychopathic types manipulate the edge of the conservative movement for their own gain. And a lot of that's cloaked in anti-Semitic guise. There's plenty of anti-Semitism on the left too, by the way. So it's not unique to the right.
Well, particularly now.
Yes, particularly now.
Right.
And so, you've let your curiosity guide you, your curiosity and your desire for knowledge, this quest, you've let that guide you as a podcaster. And by the way, I'm trying to work through exactly the same sort of thing. How do you know, given your radical increase in stature over the last 10 years, how do you know when your curiosity and even your skepticism about the fact that things aren't the way that people say they are, because that's certainly been demonstrated in the last 10 years, how should anyone decide what guardrails to put up? Like, what do you look for? Do you have a conceptual system worked out for that? Like,
what do you mean? In what way?
Well,
how do I look for in terms of people to talk to?
Yeah. Because you have this insanely immense platform, and you're inviting people onto it. And you said to Douglas, and I know this to be true, that you're not really thinking about the outcome exactly. You're thinking about, this is an interesting person to talk to, and I'd like to go on that quest. But then you have the additional conundrum. We're trying to work this out in the Daily Wire side of things too. Not to say that that's exactly the same situation. It's like, once you gain in reach and authority, then how do you know that? How do you take great care that the people you're talking to aren't, what would you say, eliciting or feeding a subculture, yeah, that's right, that hasn't got the proper aims? Like, I guess the legacy media probably worked that out by having people, mediators, right, and guests, and that was also back when we could rely on the structures of authority in some sense to filter. And now we're in this helter-skelter world where everything is
The
up
legacy
for
media
grabs.
is the worst at that now.
Yeah, I know.
They're the worst
I
at
know.
that, which is fascinating. You know, it really is. It's really fascinating when
I thought that was really interesting to hear about the 3 points that I already picked up from Jordan Peterson about anti-Semitism. First, he said, well, in the conversation, the first thing they said is that the Jews are just successful, and it boils down to jealousy. The second point, that it's a matter of family, and they're different. They're a minority. They're not integrated. And the third point that Jordan was talking about was that you really don't know where to draw the lines between curiosity and between objective analysis and subjective analysis, because the lines are pretty gray. What's really interesting is that in the Torah we're told that anti-Semitism began at Mount Sinai when God chose the Jewish people. In fact, the word Sinai in Hebrew, the Talmud tells us, is the same word as hatred in Hebrew. Because when Sinai happened, hatred happened. Because the nations of the land were jealous of the Jews becoming the chosen people. It's nothing short of sibling rivalry. It's a simple situation where one kid is chosen out of 5 or 10 kids, and you're going to get more than the other ones, or you're going to be chosen, and that's why the other ones will not let him live it down. Tragically, if you're going to be more successful, if you're going to be more chosen, then we feel less than. The solution to that is for us to be able to be a light unto the nations. And for the nations themselves to recognize and say that being chosen by God does not mean that you're any less than. We're all children of God. Every single human being upon the face of this earth is a child of God Almighty, has value and purpose and mission and dignity and grace and honor. We all have been chosen for a different mission. As Jews, we were chosen to be a light unto the nations. But what about the non-Jews? That doesn't mean that they serve no purpose. Not at all. They too are the children of God Almighty, and without them, the world and the purpose of God in this world could not be fulfilled. If instead of looking at somebody else and feeling less than, we could look at ourselves and say, what am I needed for? What am I here for? What is my purpose? How can I make this world into a better place? We won't have to worry about how the grass is green on the other side. We won't have to worry about who's more successful, who's more chosen. It's just like a marriage. When you chose your spouse, does that mean that every other male or female in the world is less than? It doesn't mean that. It just means that we've chosen each other. That's it. It doesn't mean that I've rejected every other woman in the face of this earth because I chose my wife. It just means that I chose my wife and she's connected to me now and I'm connected to her. But every other woman should have a wonderful life. We wish them all the best. The same thing with the Jews being the chosen people. We were chosen by God, that's great. But that doesn't mean that everybody else is unchosen or non-chosen. If we all are able to find our strength from within, we won't need to find insecurity from without.